This is your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lindsay Soprano. On the show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. One of the things that I simply love about doing this show is that I learn more and more about how I not only found my place in this world, finally, by podcasting, but I also found myself again. Not just my place in it, but I found me again. And I don't even know if I even really knew who me was, quite frankly. And I say this because it's been a very long time since I feel like I've ever been true to myself. And I never would have guessed that it would take me getting sick, desperately sick and diseased, as we like to say on this show, right? And in pain to be true to myself. And another thing that I love about this, being on podcast and hosting one as well, is that I get to meet people every day from all around the world who just fucking rock, like seriously. And this has just been the best journey that I've been on thus far. So sadly, though, I also have come to see the true reality that there is so much trauma that surrounds us every day, all day, everywhere we go. But what I've learned is that I'm just not alone in what I struggle with. And that has been huge. Talk about a weighted blanket wrapped around me. And that's new and amazing awareness that has led me down more mindful paths in my day-to-day. But as I continue to age gracefully, me, are swimming in new waters over here at 45 years old when it comes to this bod, and as a woman, enjoying the beginning of perimenopause. Yay. Round of applause for all of us who are experiencing this joyful time of our life together. But what I am learning is that it actually also is associated with an increase in pain. And even more interesting when it comes to the link between trauma and emotional health, because we're losing these hormones that have protected us, right? And they start to go away. They start to dwindle. It's just like our skin, we're like, what is going on here? It doesn't look like it used to, right? So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the link between an increase in pain and angst from unresolved trauma as a result of the impacts of the perimenopausal, easy for me to say, hormonal shifts. And I've got a guest for us here for you today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you today to my guest and amazingly gorgeous Sheryl Carroll.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, beautiful.
Hi. What a great intro. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, you're just amazing. And what's so interesting about her is that she used to be a banking professional. And she turned into, and when you get to know her personality, I don't see how she could be in banking, but she was. And she turned into this integrative health practitioner and a health coach for women. She works with women to connect their health dots, which I love that, and resolve the things that are holding them back from living with radiant energy and feeling strong and sexy in both body and mind. And I know it's so hard when we get older to feel sexy, right? So she's going to bring our sexy back a little bit. She has a special interest in autoimmune conditions, thyroid health, talk about thyroid, adrenal dysfunction, and other issues that are related to chronic inflammation. Her mission is to inspire women to make their health a top priority. Wait, what? Yeah, we need to put our health as a top priority, enabling us to reach our fullest potential in life. So I'm going to roll out the red carpet for you, girlfriend. And I'd like to start by talking about what made you make the switch from banking to integrative medicine and unpack that a little. And then let's take it from there.
Absolutely. Also the red carpet. I love it. And so I have been somebody who's always been interested in health. But when I say interested in health, it wasn't really healthy. When I look back on my past, when I was labeled as the healthy one who loved to exercise, but it was over exercise, was interested in the healthy nutrition, but I feel like that was more control than anything else. And it was always just kind of part of me. I just wanted to be the healthiest version of myself, etc. And, you know, when I was doing my chartered accountancy and then traveled around the world. I did this with a very close friend. And so we did that together in Johannesburg. We went to New York together. We went to London together. And we continued these healthy habits together. And we ended up in Australia together. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, she was diagnosed with bowel cancer. And this absolutely like shook my world because I didn't understand how somebody who was healthy like me and was making the healthy choices, was exercising, was interested in all of the health related things could get sick. And, so I was around 6 months pregnant. And then through that, when my daughter was 6 weeks old, she passed away. So I was going through this really strange phase where I was bringing new life into the world when I was losing a life. And
yeah, kidding.
And so I just had this like fear around, am I doing the right things for myself, for this new little family that I have? How can I understand health if this can happen? Because it just felt to me it wasn't just something that happened. It wasn't just chance that cancer presents itself. So this was the question that was going around in my head. So when I was pregnant with my son, I said to my husband, I feel like I just want to do some extra studying when I'm on maternity leave so that I can really validate the decisions that I'm making for my family. And the line of questioning I had was all around nutrition. So when I was on maternity leave, I stumbled upon the Institute of Integrative Nutrition Health Coaching certification. And that gave me this really broad view of what integrative health is. And I was like, wow, I'm starting to get it, that it's more than just, cutting back the carbs and, having low fat or whatever the hell I used to do back in the day. My gosh, exactly. And like over exercising.
We've done it all.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gave me this introduction, but I wanted to go deeper. And that's when I started to follow Dr. Stephen Cabral, who created a certification which is based on functional medicine, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, and he's brought all of these modalities together. And when I started going through his certification and going deeper into his level 2, which is all functional medicine based, I was like, this is my thing. It's marrying my auditing skills of root cause analysis and health. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes sense that I've been in this job for so many years, because it's the listening, it's the connecting the dots that actually helps people move forward and, thinking very creatively around each individual, because we're all different as to how we get to where we are in terms of our health journey.
So when we talk about, I love that you brought in the banking thing about assessment and analysis and all that, because that makes complete sense, the analytical part of your brain and all these wonderful things that you did. And now you just apply it to a whole different shift. I think that's actually a really sweet little bridge there. So when you got into this, you really started to focus on women's health because, we're women and that's what we need to be focused on.
But just on that,
no.
I didn't. But you know what happens? The universe helps you on your journey. I just started to, I definitely worked. I worked with men and I worked with different age groups, but I kept on being given women who were in their 40s having these different symptoms. And then I connected my own dots and realized, oh my gosh, I'm in perimenopause. And this was before I went into health coaching full time. I was doing it part time and I was still in banking. I was in a very toxic work environment. I was working a full time job in 3 days, people that didn't want me to be doing this arrangement, and kids that didn't sleep. So I'd be up from 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd go and I'd work a full day. I'd work at night, kids, all the things. And I ended up this absolutely anxious, emotional wreck. I was a shell of myself, and I was 41. I distinctly remember it. I was 41, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm this resilient person who can take on anything. I'm always positive. I'm this. And all of a sudden, I wasn't that anymore. And that's because through all of the stress, my progesterone, which is the lovely calming hormone, started to dip. And my hormones were already slightly messed up because I had been a marathon runner for like an over exerciser for like 10 years. I didn't have a period from my 20s to my 30s. And that pushes you into an earlier experience of low hormones in perimenopause. So this realization of, oh my goodness, I'm in perimenopause. So then I just started to go deep into this space because that became my mission. Because I was like, if I am experiencing this and understanding the impact it had on my life at that stage, and I'm unaware, I need to make this my spotlight because there are other women suffering out there just as much. I had the knowledge to correct my path through slowing down, really adjusting my lifestyle to nourish myself, to rebalance. But other people don't know this. And they just think that they're losing their minds.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I think that kind of comes with it. We're all a little bit crazy, guys. All right. It's okay. It's okay to lose your mind just a little bit, but you can't let it go too far. And that's where, like, I'm glad that you brought that up, where you're like, you said it perfectly and so eloquently about being a shell of yourself. And I totally identify with that. I'm just like, wait a second. How did this happen? All of a sudden, it like snuck up on me and bit me in the butt like an ostrich in a wild animal park. And I just like, and then simultaneously, all of the pain stuff was happening and was increasing. Until we spoke, I really did not know the true connection between perimenopause and the pain that we already had suffered, that may be from past trauma, but also anybody that's chronically ill, all of it just intensifies when we move into that. So can you talk a little bit to us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So should I first just explain what perimenopause is, what menopause is, just so there's that kind of definition clarified?
Yeah.
So perimenopause, what I'm seeing these days is it starts from as early as the age of 35 because we've got all of this physical, mental, and emotional stress. We're just in a pressure cooker, and that starts to disrupt our hormones earlier. And so what happens then is the first hormone that starts to dip down is progesterone, which is the calming hormone that comes in after ovulation in the second half of our cycle. And the importance of progesterone is that it keeps estrogen in check. And estrogen, if you think of a car analogy, estrogen is like your foot on the pedal and progesterone is your foot on the brakes. So progesterone keeps estrogen in check. And when estrogen goes rogue and goes wild without enough progesterone, it creates this inflammation, this pain, really sore breasts, irritability, heat, all of that kind of stuff. And so progesterone is the first hormone to drop down. And so in the early days, the subtle symptoms are poor sleep, more irritability, maybe slightly heavier bleeding. And then your cycle will start to shorten, like maybe 1 or 2 days from what's normal for you. And then that's kind of the beginning phases of perimenopause. And then you move into phase 2, and that's when the ovaries. So really what perimenopause is the ovaries are deciding that they don't want to do their job anymore. And so the adrenal glands are going to take over. So what happens there is that the ovaries start to slow down, and the pituitary gland in the brain is like, no, this is not happening. And we'll shout down to the ovaries, like, produce. And then the ovaries will sometimes overproduce, and then other times will not produce enough estrogen. So it becomes like these wild swings of the hormones, which feels very like out of control for women, because it's actually classified as being the second puberty. So perimenopause is like it's like puberty in reverse. So all the chaos that happens when you get your period, first of all, is like happening in reverse for you in perimenopause. So it's the swings of the hormones that can be quite difficult for women because their hormone receptors all over our body. So the body's like, okay, 1 month we've got a lot, the next month we've got a little, like what the hell's going on here? It's like this recalibration. And then when we get to, then our periods start to become less regular. So we can skip 2 months and then it comes again, then skips 4 months, comes again. And then menopause is just a day where we haven't had a period for a year. And then you're in menopause for the rest of your life.
So then when it comes to me, is I had no period for 3 years. And then it just lovingly came back full tilt, like worse than it ever was. And now I'm dealing with that. And it's kind of, well, here and there. Now nothing's really like, I'm not getting anything regular at all. But I've always had problems with my period, and that's that's a whole other episode about just that. How much more do you want to learn about how Lindsay bleeds? No, it's just I started my period very early. I started at 9 years old. And then, it's just been up and down and all around with my body and my health for so long. But why in God's name did I was so stoked. I was like, yes, I'm done. And then it came right on back with a vengeance.
So did it come back did it come back around the COVID vaccine or anything like that?
Shut up. Yes.
Happened to a lot of women.
It came back shortly after the first, and I didn't want to get vaccinated. It's not because I'm anti-vax. I just, with my CRPS and my easy for me to say, with my CRPS and my body stuff, I was like, my central nervous system is so screwed up as it is. And I'm always sensitive to anything. I've always been that way with any kind of a pill or any kind of a medication, anything. I'm always so sensitive to it. And I was like, my sweetie and I got in a fight both times we were on our way to get our vaccines because I did not want to do it. And I was so upset. And I was so mad. And it was like, well, you've got to. And I'm like, okay. So I did the 2 and I haven't done anything else since then. I'm not doing it. But that is interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it happened to a lot of women. So I don't know the mechanisms around that, but interesting that
we're not asking you to be Fauci right now.
But interesting that it's still going on for you. Do you know what I mean? So what perhaps happened is that you weren't truly in menopause. Like you still had some go. You still had some go in your body.
Got some go at it for still left.
So that must have been the case, but that happens a lot. So COVID itself, as in the virus, and the vaccine has had huge implications on hormonal health and periods for women. That's just something to flag. Yeah.
Yeah, that is something to flag. I've got a flag and it's a middle finger. I can tell you that much right now.
So you obviously are not yet. So you are not yet in menopause because your periods are still doing some funky things, and which is normal. Which is normal for this phase. Around the age of 45, like that's normal. So I personally still have a regular period, but some months it's like 23 days, depending on my levels of stress, and other months it'll be 27, 28. So that's kind of what mine is doing at the moment. So it's so what it seems to me in my cycle is that if I'm really focusing on managing my levels of stress and, optimizing that, then, I'm having a normal cycle. Whereas some women at this stage will already be skipping ovulation events. So they may bleed every month, but they may not ovulate, which is really like the star of the show. Like we're wanting ovulatory events. And then other times they will just skip a whole cycle or 2 cycles because they haven't ovulated. So that's kind of how that's how it all plays out in terms of the change.
Okay, so now can we move into, so now we've got a better definition of this, and I like that. Thank you for doing that for us, because it sounds so stupid that like women are asking the question about the change and they're asking about why are these things happening. That makes me so sad because it really does show how left behind we are in education and tools and the things that we need to know about our own bods and our doctors that I know my general practitioner that I was with for many, many years from when I was a little girl, until probably my early 20s or whatever. I didn't get any like decent conversations that had any curiosity about why I might be experiencing these things with my health at such a young age,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many women just think, oh, one day your period stops and that's all it is, when actually, and you may get a hot flash, but actually like the most problematic time for women is perimenopause. So it's before you hit your last period. Like that's the shit show, actually. And that's when, to your point around pain and inflammation and autoimmune conditions, like perimenopause is a very kind of pivotal place where women end up being diagnosed with autoimmune conditions because the change in the hormones results in a change to our immune system itself, and it causes an increase in our levels of inflammation. So kind of that with the catalyst, and then if you think about the fact that when the ovaries are slowing down, the adrenals, we want the adrenal glands to pick up the slack. So now the adrenal glands are trying to do sex hormones and the cortisol, and like that's a lot. So, we do end up having less resilience to stress. So it's the perfect storm of where we are in this phase where, a lot of women have perhaps still young kids like myself, or they've got kids that are leaving home and elderly parents working, shootings, war. Like it's a lot. It's a lot. And women very often underestimate the stress of their cognitive load because we always worry about everybody else, not ourselves. So there's that, plus what's going on physiologically with us that I see as being the biggest contributor to like very problematic perimenopause symptoms and like these diagnoses that women get at the stage of life.
Yeah, and that's nuts. When we earlier for our meet and greet, we talked about how unresolved trauma can creep in during this span of time too. Why?
So what happens here is with the change in hormones, if you think about our hormones when we are in our full reproductive years, are helping us to be these resilient caretakers because our role is to procreate and to look after the tribe. And then when it comes to perimenopause and we're starting to lose the protection of our hormones, things that should have irritated us before really start to irritate us because we don't have this protection shield. Because I think when you get into this phase, if you really start to draw attention to it, I don't know, I'll just use a silly example, like maybe the way your husband chews. Like he's probably always chewed like that, but then now you're in perimenopause and he's chewing next to you and you're like, what is that? Like, what is that sound?
What the are you doing right now?
But I've always done this. And now it's irritating because there's less filter. There's less kind of stopping you. And so what the research has actually shown that where women do have unresolved trauma in their past, like unresolved emotions, it really starts to kind of come to the surface as things that need to be resolved in their lives. So that can be the thing that is actually what is driving like their more severe perimenopause symptoms. Because if you think about it, we have less resilience to stress. And I always think about trauma as like a stone in the shoe. It's just like been digging. And by the time you get to perimenopause, there's like a big gouge in your heel. And now it's like, okay, it's time to look at this. But it's what I find in the work that I do with women, it's easier to focus on the physical, like, okay, so how do I need to change my nutrition? And then, okay, so how does my exercise need to change? But actually like turning the spotlight onto the emotional stuff is just like, it's hard, as you know, it's like hard.
It is a full-time job here and go, wow, okay. So all of these things are contributing factors. Some of them have been my decisions that have been made piss poor or great, whatever they've been. Some of them have been completely out of my control. But here I am doing this exercise with my guests on the, I feel like I'm doing it every day because I am, but trying to just unpack all of this. And I'm unpacking a hell of a lot more than I actually thought I needed to. And that's been very interesting for me. I'm using the word interesting just because it is interesting that all of these things have kind of aligned with a timeline of how I've been ill here and there throughout my years and what happened then and how my body responded to it. And now putting it all together, I'm like, wow, I was 100% failed by the people that were supposed to be helping and to take care of me as a kid, as a teenager, in high school, in college, all of these places where I'm like, wow, I was screaming for help from the very beginning of being so young and going back and going, oh my God, how did none of these people like go, you know what, we should probably intervene here. Maybe we should like check on her. She's 14. She's at her period. Like there's all these different things that I'm like, resentment has come up through this unpacking of shame and unpacking. And I'm just like, I'm getting mad. like, well, I'm not getting mad. I've been pretty resentful and angry. And I've been working through those emotions because it also is contributing to how I'm responding to stress. Because my stress response is, well, get mad about it or get angry about it or go sob about it and lock yourself in a bedroom just like you would when you were a little girl.
Yeah.
Cry, throw a tantrum, and then go away and hide, deal with it yourself, figure it out on your own. Don't ask for help. Don't call anybody. Don't reach out to your friend. Don't talk to your spouse. That's what I knew because that was kind of how I was raised. Like, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. Everything's going to be fine. You're fine. You're young. You're young. You're young. No, I'm not anymore. And all of these things have been adding up and stacking, those little tiny things that happen over your whole life. And now here we are. It's like the princess and the pea, all of the mattresses. And that's all these things. And now that pea is literally like what my body is like. It's just, it will not go away. It will not release itself. I feel like I'm getting actually better in the pain department over the past few weeks. And I'm not 100% sure why. And I'm trying, and I was talking to my sweetie about it right before we got here, right before we got on, because I'm like, what changed? Because I know something has shifted and we're not sure I don't know how to identify it because I do so many things. So I started to kind of pull back on doing like 20 different things that were healthy for my body and instead do like one or two so that I could analyze, like my little banker over here. I could analyze, well, if I took this is how I responded to it. And let's see how that works for like a week, But we want I want the immediate gratification. I want to feel better. And when we're so tired all the time and we hurt and we're achy and we're sad and we're overwhelmed, it's hard to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. And that's
because you're taking care of everybody else.
and that's where I find that, actually working with somebody who can show you where you're going to and just like hold your hand. Your comment now, you were like, I've got to do it on my own. No, you don't have to do it on your own at all. Because you shouldn't have to do it on your own. We're not meant to do things on our own. We're meant to be in community, supporting one another, being mirrors for one another. It's like finding the right community, the right people to walk with you.
Yeah, because we're not supposed to live in isolation, I mean, I'm great at it. I'm a complete homebody. I'm completely isolated, especially with me not being able to go do all the fun things that I used to be able to do, walking my dogs and hiking and yoga and skiing and biking and all the things I used to do.
For now.
For now, that's where I am. And I'm in this place and I get it and I understand it and I've embraced it and I've accepted it. The acceptance part was the hardest. And so then once I got to that point, now I'm here. And so what can we do as women in this phase, right, of this change of ours? Where do we really begin? Like where do we start right now? If you're listening right now and you're going through any of the things that we've just been talking about, what in the heck are we going to do for us, right? What do we do? And what is your role in that?
So what I always recommend for women, it's like, let's go back to like the basics. So number one is tracking your cycle and your symptoms. Get familiar with your body. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like hormonal symptoms, like anything, like digestive distress, brain fog, irritability, like it could be heavy bleeding, it could be pain, like whatever it is, get familiar with where you are. And I always say, because obviously like not everybody can work with someone like me, but chat to your friends and just say like, is this normal? Like, I really want to encourage women to stop normalizing feeling like crap, these symptoms, because they're all signs from your body that something is out of balance. So number one is get familiar with your body, your cycle. Where are you on that perimenopausal journey? Get your hormones tested, know where you're at in the context of your hormones. It is slightly more tricky in perimenopause to get an accurate reading because there can be those swings, but you can see where your progesterone is, if you're ovulating or not. Testosterone is also a good one to test because low testosterone affects so many women because it's impacted by stress as well. So do that. And then educate yourself on exactly what the change is. So yes, I've given you a very kind of high level overview, but there's so much more to it. What it means in the context of your nutrition, how you exercise, the real importance of recovery and boundaries, all of those sorts of things that women are not so good at. So that's,
boundaries. I don't know what that
what
word
is that
is.
word?
I've not heard it before.
Interesting.
I don't know. It sounds terrible. But I'm glad that you even said that, because boundaries are really hard. And, I've had to boundary a hell of a lot of people and a hell of a lot of things in the past year and a half. And it is not easy work. It is not easy work.
We haven't practiced. It's a skill.
But man, oh man, of course not. We weren't taught to. We were told, do this. If you don't, you're in trouble.
Or
do this. If you don't, you're in trouble.
You're not loved.
Yeah. You're not perfect enough, then great. And I talk about it all the time about perfectionism, because I grew up in a world, in my mind at least, that was, I wasn't ever going to be good enough. I wasn't going to be perfect enough. I wasn't going to do all these things. So I try to do all of this to be good student, great GPA, get into the good colleges, do all these things. But then on the other side, I was also so incredibly rebellious and so incredibly self-sabotaging constantly. And I was fighting against myself. I still fight against myself, but I was fighting against myself in such an early developmental stage in my life that, looking back at it, I'm like, wow, I'm actually lucky that I'm alive considering all of the stuff that's happened. And so looking at it from I'm fortunate that I'm here, and I'm fortunate that I've got the opportunity to speak and meet people like yourself. And now I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm almost at this place in my world where I'm now just beginning to actually live. Yeah.
But that's
kind of makes me cry a little bit that it's taken this long.
I know, but beautiful. But think about the amazing impact you're going to have on the world, right?
I'm working on it.
I know, but you are. Just honestly, by being who you are, bring to these conversations, you're drawing people in to have and to listen to the very tough messages, the very difficult conversations, and you're normalizing the stuff that people hide in the closet because they feel shame about it. And yes, it is deeply, deeply sad that you've gone through this, that this has been your path. And I cannot wait to see what your next years are going to look like.
Me neither, baby.
And I think, we can
Me neither.
Which is why it's so important. And I think that's the other thing, it's we can spend so long in the future, with our minds in the future, which drives anxiety, or we can spend our time in the past, which drives depression, but actually we're missing out on the present moment. The beauty that we are creating in the present moment is what I think we miss so much, because we just chasing our tails.
Yeah, we miss it. We literally are flying over it at 30,000 feet. We're like, well, we missed all that good stuff because we were worried about all the cabin pressure and oxygen masks coming down.
Totally.
And, it's just, it's nuts. And it's crazy that how much just these small little things add up and how much they contribute to our well-being and our health.
But let me just close off the conversation around, what you can actually do, because then you can, ask me questions around that. So really, there's so many women doctors who have written books now around menopause. They are great books. There's a Canadian woman, Dr. Laura Bryden, who's got a book called The Hormone Repair Manual, which is brilliant. It's like a manual. So there's scripts around how to talk to your doctor. There's all kind of conditions that women have, how you can treat them naturally, if you want conventional medicine, you can use conventional medicine. She gives tips. That's brilliant. There's another Dr. Marisa Snyder who's written a book around menopause, perimenopause, and using essential oils if that's your jam. So there's so many options in terms of just grab a book, read it, or even get an audiobook. And that's you can just get enough information to be able to advocate for yourself. So that's number one. And then the other thing is the importance of adjusting your lifestyle. Our body, because we've got the shifting hormones, our bodies just have a different requirement in terms of the food that we eat. So, we start to lose muscle, our bones weaken. It sounds terrible, but it sounds terrible, but our hormones are amazing. Think about all of these things that our hormones do for us, apart from, allowing us to procreate. They do so much for us that we only really start to appreciate when they start to go away. And then,
For sure.
and so then that's where we have to use our lifestyle to help our bodies pick up the slack from where we're losing our hormones. So, whole food nutrition, prioritizing protein, good quality fats, not having like pasta 7 meals of the day, like appropriate amounts of fasting. I think fasting is a bit of a question mark in my mind. And by that, I mean long fasts, because fasting is a hormetic stress. And I just feel like generally women in our age group have a lot of stuff on it. And I just feel like sometimes doing extra long fasts, particularly at the wrong time of their cycle, they just won't get any of the benefits, and it just stresses the body out too much. So that's a very individualized thing, but everybody can be doing an overnight fast of like 13, 14, maybe even 15 hours. That's doable, and that's what I recommend.
I'm the queen of fasting because I just don't like to eat. That's my challenge.
You don't like to eat at all? Why? Because what?
I just get sick. I call it pain puking. It's very, it's just something that over the past couple years, I would say 5-6 years of all of this, slowly but surely, I was never really a foodie anyway, whatever. Okay. If somebody can, and I've said this before on the show, so those who've listened forever, this jam, but it's like, I just wish that I could just take a pill in the morning for breakfast, take a pill in the afternoon for lunch, and one for dinner, and I'll be good. And then have a glass of wine. I'm like, that sounds amazing. I don't like food in my mouth. Like, I don't like to chew it. I've gotten to the point that it's almost like I'm pregnant. Like I'm so sensitive to smells. It's terrible. And I go in these waves where like I was really doing well a couple of weeks ago and bringing back food into my world and really embracing it. And people are like applauding me like I'm running a marathon, and they're like, giving me a medal at the end of a dinner. I'm like, come on, But I mean, I can see everybody watching me eat or not eat because I push my food around. I make it look like I kind of ate a little bit. I do a little bite. I chew it slowly. And then I'm like, I'm just not interested in it. And I did it last night at dinner. I went out with one of my girlfriends and I had a bite of my little fajita and I had like a little spoon of soup. And I was like, that's all I can do.
Wow.
So I'm challenged in that because with this, I never had problems with body dysmorphic issues. I didn't have anything like that. It wasn't like I intended to have an eating disorder or disordered eating. It just kind of ended up happening. And so now here I am. You're talking about, our bones getting brittle and, I'm getting a hunch on my back. I'm like, all of the old people stuff is happening now. And I'm like, but I'm atrophied like you would not believe. So much of that I know is because I haven't been feeding my body as well as I should be. If it actually just feeding it. And it's something that I didn't think was as big of a deal as it has turned into be. And it's something that I really, really have to get a grip on. And I thought I was doing better. And in the past couple of weeks, I kind of slipped up again. And so I don't know, perhaps it could just be my hormones going up and down, and that's affecting my appetite and my sensitivity to smells, my sensitivity to light. I know a lot of that is other health issues that I've got going on too, but the food thing is my biggest challenge for sure.
The other thing for you to think about as well from a thyroid, because if you think about thyroid is your metabolic regulator. So if you absolutely just never feel hungry, then that could also be something, because, waking up in the morning and not feeling hungry, that's not necessarily a good thing. It just means that your metabolism isn't revved up. So the fact that that you're not eating because you've got all these things, which are totally valid thoughts, and it's in your, it's probably just ingrained into your nervous system as well, that there is this element of fear around food, as opposed to seeing food as nourishment, etc. So so there's that kind of thought that I was thinking from what you were sharing. And the other thing, which I think you may have done testing on around already, but the sensitivities as well can be representative of, a higher toxic load. But generally, when you have autoimmune conditions or conditions like yourself, it's the body's ability to detoxify is compromised. So that would make sense if there's, this buildup of toxins in your system that can drive that sensitivity, as well as vagus nerve issues, which, you'd be.
Oh yeah, I have been up on the vagus nerve stuff. I've been working on that for some time now, and I definitely am getting some benefits from that for sure. And I think a lot of what we talked about earlier about how I am seeing some changes in my pain by doing a lot of the things with the vagus nerve and doing the polyvagal theory and all of that stuff. I find it to be so incredibly interesting. I had no idea what the power of that was, and I don't think we know what our thyroid is, the power behind our thyroid either. They're just like, oh, well, because when you get your blood test, because they always test for it, oh, your thyroid's fine. I'm like, oh my God, there are so many women in my world that have thyroid issues that their original testing and everything came back that they were fine until they went and they talked to somebody like yourself and did actual functional diagnostic testing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the traditional doctors will only test thyroid stimulating hormone, which isn't actually a thyroid hormone. It's the communication down to the thyroid to produce thyroid gland. They don't test the full thyroid panel itself. So you're right. There are so many women who go undiagnosed with thyroid issues. And, even for me, when we moved to the country last year, I have now realized that I had, from all the stress and everything and having COVID and, all the funky things of COVID, my thyroid started to suffer. And I only recognized that since moving back to the coast and really upping the nutrients that I know the thyroid reliant, having released all of this. I just gained all of this kind of bloat, water weight, and was just feeling really tired. And that's what the thyroid weight that you get is you almost just feel a little bit puffy, and you just carry the weight.
That's a good word, puffy.
Yeah. Puffy. And you just carry this extra weight around your stomach and thighs and stuff like that. It's almost because when you have thyroid dysfunction, very often you've been pushing it too hard. So it's the cortisol belly weight. That's really what starts to show. And, but my thyroid numbers, my thyroid stimulating hormone was fine, but I know that I needed to do some work, but I know what to do. And I can, now that I'm balanced again, I can recognize, oh, wow, that was it.
I would love to be in balance.
It's
I would love to.
It's a hard thing.
I would love to be there.
And you will get there.
It is. I will. Yeah, there's no option. Well, and here's another thing. And I said, I know that we're creeping up on time here, but I was talking last night with my sweetie about how I know that the relationships that I'm building with the people that are on this show, some of them I already know. I've got lifelong friends. One of them, she was on an episode with me, Angie Weber. I love you, girl. She and I do every week on Tuesdays. We do Talk Shit Tuesdays together. I met her being a guest on my show, and I was on hers. And, when we're talking about balance, I think that friendship, and we got so isolated with COVID, and we ended up coming so far into ourselves, and we were stuck on Zoom. And then in the podcast world, we're now even more isolated because now we're just in our studios. We're on our cameras. We're doing our thing. We're doing all of the things, and that part of it throws our balance off too. And the balance part for me is tenfold. I think it is for all women, but it is definitely a challenge to get it. But I absolutely still is getting our groove back by doing this. This is far better than any medicine that could be given to me. Is doing what I'm doing here. I'm giving my pain purpose.
And also it's about knowing yourself. I think that's the most, because what looks like balance for me doesn't look like balance for you. So it's really about knowing yourself, and knowing how you want to feel. What does balance feel like in your body? What does it, really focusing on, the visualization and the feeling into how you want to feel, whether it's balance or whether it's how you want to feel as a perimenopausal woman, because only you can drive your path towards that place. So when it comes to all of these different lifestyle pillars that we can do, you need to be tracking to see, well, am I actually heading towards this place of this perimenopausal woman that I want to, step into, who has energy, who doesn't lose her car keys all the time, who's not irritable, who's not carrying the cortisol tire around her belly. Only if the things that you are doing are getting you there or are moving you further away from her. So it's really knowing yourself, where you are and where you want to go is really important in the whole picture of any change.
Yeah, that, and also being 100% honest with yourself. Because if you are 99% honest with yourself, that 1% is going to kick your because I've lived my whole life living at 99%, right? That 1% is so much bigger than the 99. And then when I started like unpeeling all of the layers of this 1%, I was like, oh, holy God, there's so much here. And I'm getting so much out and validated for a lot of the things that have happened to me. You know, a lot of that shame and that guilt that comes with trauma really does sit in your psyche for so long. I mean, it drives how you feel about yourself. It drives your self-worth. And that's something that I've unfortunately had to look at myself in the mirror. Well, not unfortunately. No. I fortunately am looking at myself in the mirror now for the first time. And it took me a very long time to get there and be able to honestly look at myself and go, okay, well, you did all of these things. And if you're going to start this journey that I'm on with you right now, then you're going to have to be 100% you and be as authentic as you possibly can be. And by doing this, I'm also holding myself accountable. And that is a huge thing for me because my listeners and the people that listen to my show, some of them, they've known me since I was a little girl. And they will hold me accountable. They do hold me accountable, you know? And so there's an element of that I am intentional about what I do here because my health is my future, you know?
Yeah. Which is, no.
There's people like you beautiful green-eyed girl. Oh my gosh, I wish you could see her. She's so damn pretty. I fell in love with you.
You're very, very sweet. Thank you. I think you maybe need to change your glasses, but anyway.
Oh my goodness. No, they're brand new. My vision is perfect. Nice try, lady. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, this has been wonderful. Before we go, is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with? And then we want to talk about where we can find you and what's coming up.
Yes. So the most important thing, which is really part of my mission, is to make yourself a priority. There is only one of you. And I think we all have this kind of servant's heart. We want everybody to be well looked after. But remember, you cannot do that job if you are not healthy and if you are not looking after yourself. You know, you need to fill your cup first. It's so cliched, but you honestly just need to fill your cup first. Like, leave it as it is. I'll leave that. And also that the perimenopausal journey, suffering is optional. So really empower yourself to be able to feel your best, have the body that you want to have in this phase of life, you know, the ability to respond as opposed to freaking like react to everyone and be irritable, etc. Like that doesn't have to be your reality. So educate yourself. And, you know, we didn't get through all of these, but the pillars that you need to be thinking about are nourishing your body, moving your body just enough to be able to build your strength, build your muscles, get your heart pumping. You know, cardiovascular disease risk is huge for women because of the hormonal shifts. And then we've got, you know, detoxification. Your gut is hugely important, and, you know, managing your nervous system. You know, the breathing, the meditation, the slowing down is very important for us. So those are just kind of a very quick whistle-stop tour of the things that I'd like women just to start thinking about when it comes to their health, because it is actually the holistic lens, which is what's going to get you to where you want to be, as you already know.
Oh my gosh, you're so wonderful. Okay, so you've got a new program that's going to be coming out. You want to do a little addition on that for a minute?
Yes. So I actually have two. So the first one is just a 4-week course, which is called the Midlife Women's Nutritional Toolkit. So this is where I go in depth on understanding your body's new requirements with the changing hormones and what that means from a nutritional standpoint. So I'll help you with exactly how to structure your macros, how to fill your plates, how to go about eating, the fasting situation as well, and also talk a lot about emotional eating and breaking through kind of weight loss resistance, which often happens. It's a real pain point for women in midlife because our bodies don't do what they used to do. So then women are like, oh my God, what do I do? Like nothing's helping because they actually just don't know what they should be doing. And then the second program, which is my real passion project, which is called the Signals of Safety Blueprint. So this is a program which is focused on supporting women who have suboptimal thyroid function or a diagnosed thyroid condition to make the lifestyle changes to help them optimize their thyroid function. So if they want to, they can then work with their GP to kind of get off any meds or just really start to feel better. The whole point is, as we spoke about earlier, the thyroid can really mess people up when it's not working well. Pain, fatigue, weight gain, brain fog, cold all the time, like all the things. So, this is a program that's really just to educate women on how to support their optimal thyroid health and then to get them to just feeling better.
I love it. I love it so much. And she is passionate about it. I've been watching it with her and I've been listening to her about it and talk to her about it with me prior to this. And it really is neat what she's doing for us ladies. So, and by proxy, it will affect men because we won't be so pissed off at you all of the time.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, we can find this cutie patootie at ytvhealthcoaching.com. Will you please tell us why it is YTV, please?
So my business name is called Your Tiny Voice. And there are two reasons behind that. So my nickname is actually Tiny. So when I arrived in Australia, everybody just started to call me Tiny because I'm not very large.
She's tiny.
And it's also around like everything I do in terms of my coaching is really helping people get to this place of balance that we've spoken about, because it's from that place of balance that you can then listen to your intuition. Because until you're in a place of balance, these messages your body is giving you are not, they're not ones that you can take meaningful steps forward from. But from a balanced body, you can recognize, physically, mentally, emotionally, what the right steps forward are based on the cues from your body.
I love it. I wanted to make sure that you told us that story because I think it's adorable because she's so cute and she is tiny. And I love that tiny little voice because we tend to not listen to her all that often. It's like, excuse me, how the whispers of her that we're supposed to be listening to on a day-to-day basis, then they start screaming like, ladies, it's time to pay attention.
Exactly.
It's time to pay attention. Because we can't go, well, I'll just do that tomorrow. We're the queens of that because we're like, you should see how many stickies both my guest and myself have in our life right now. And it's like a sticky fiasco in here because there's so many things we want to do, but they're all coming from a really good place. And they're coming from a place of healing and love and spirit and drive and grit and all of that. And I absolutely adore you for all of that and what you're trying to do for us ladies
thank
too.
You so much. And thanks for having me. It's been a great chat.
Of course. Thank you for being here. It's been wonderful. You are exclusively invited to share this hot and flashy change VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Do you know anybody who is living in and with chronic pain or is struggling with health challenges or traumas or are just so hot, flashy, irritable, can't stand the chewers around them? Please send them our way. We are here for you. That is the reason that we're doing this stuff for you guys. I'd love to connect with you and hear your heartfelt stories of strength and wisdom. And we're here as a safe place for you to unleash and share your incredible stories, whether heartbreaking or heartfelt or both. Please follow the Pain Game podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.